So you want to be able to do this on your Camaro, make custom LED changing DRL lights. I'm going to show you the process of this. You're going to have to take off the bumper and remove the headlights and open them up. It's a big process, but we are going to need a ratchet set, a Dremel, some RTV sealant, wire strippers, screwdrivers, oh, and a whole lot of zip ties. Like a lot. So get a whole pack. And then of course, your Diodes Dynamic LED conversion kit. So I'll show you the whole thing. We've got Diode Dynamics right here. They are the suppliers of the RGBW LED board. There's two kits, one for the headlights and one for the lower markers right here. You need some Torx for those. Pretty sure we're gonna have to end up lifting this, taking the wheels off to be able to get the inner plastic wheel well out to get the other screws from the inside. And there's probably plastic underneath as well. Best way to get to this is through the wheel well right here. You can see this big piece of plastic. We're gonna fold that back. So when you lift the car up and take the wheels off. All right, same Torx on this. Alright, with this opened up, now we can access the bolts behind here and disconnect the bumper from this side. You will need to go along some of these screws you can see. Take this piece off of the front bumper along the front. Alright, that side's separated. Now we're going to go to the other side, do the same thing. Alright, now that both sides are off, we're going to take off the trim bolts on the bottom. Along the bottom lip, there's about like, I don't know, 10. Alright, all the bolts disconnected. This front should start to come off. Pop it up over these screws. Slide it on out. Remove it carefully. And set it down. Make sure the power lines aren't being stretched. And now you got the front bumper off, we can start taking the headlights out. We have to disconnect those wires to those, and also we're gonna work on these as well, which you have to disconnect from behind, which should be just 2 screws and a wire. So we're looking at the same size bolts, 9/32 for these headlights. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe another one underneath. Yep. Yep, just those 4 screws. Gonna have to pop this up. We just take that bolt off. You should have enough room after that. Maybe just loosen these 2. That should give you enough room right there. Just loosen that a little bit. And now the headlight should come out. We've got a few plugs, one right here. Just squeeze the tab and pull it off. Same with this one. Actually, you'll be pulling the tab on that one. And now you've got the same, or now you've got the first headlight. Now let's take out those lower markers right here. It's gonna be these modules. Looks like just a couple bolts holding it on, and then there's a plug going into it. Same 9/32 bolts. All right. Now feed this up. Disconnect this wire first down here. And now you got your left lower daytime running light. Keep them together so you don't get confused. It's a big fly. All right, so what we need to do, taking off these ballasts, both of these actually, and this metal one right here. All right, keep these and set them aside. You will need them again. Disconnect these plugs. Keep that aside. All right, now that you have your headlights apart, we're gonna get to disassembling it and putting in the new LEDs. There's some instructions in these that show you exactly what you need to do. So we need to remove the 6 T20 screws holding the black bezel in place. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there's one T10 screw in the middle back that holds it together. That's the 6th screw. And the black plate will come off. And now you have access to the inside. And this is where we're going to remove this. It has 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are T20s. Hello?
You know what I'm talking about?
What's the fretwork?
The fretwork that is on the...
Alright, now we're going to use the T10 to remove these boards. There's 3 of them. There's the old boards. Don't need those anymore. And they are marked for which ones go where. They do match up with pinholes right here, plastic pinholes. And then you'll need to get so the instructions say to use these spacers between the boards and the actual LED system, but putting those spacers in results in these boards being too far away. So I'm going to try it without the spacers. Alright, so with the spacers not used, it looks like the LEDs have enough clearance in between the boards. What I'm going to do is set up this circuit just to test it. For this test, we're going to ignore the relay. Alright, it's not stated in the instructions, but there's a black wire coming off of the driver for these LEDs. These black wires need to be grounded. So I'm going to ground these real quick. And once these are grounded, then the light should turn on. Yep. Alright, so now we have all these lights working. Let's make sure they function with the controller. Changing colors. Red, okay. Alright, now that we know everything functions, we can take it back apart and begin reinstalling everything. Okay, so this goes back into the headlight, same way it came out, with the least amount of wire inside of here so nothing gets messed up. Before you put this all back together, you want to blow it out, blow the air out of there, and make sure it's all nice and clean.
faceplate back on. Get dust off that too. And then we'll go ahead and clean this up once it's back together. Get some Windex, that's some good stuff for this. But let's go ahead and put this back on. And then we'll go ahead and finish the cleanup. And now this headlight is ready. It's the same process for the other headlight. Before you put them back together, of course, be sure to clean this all up and get as much of this glue off, the previous glue, off as possible. The glue that you're using will not stick to that glue, so it's important to get as much off as possible. And then also clean off your headlight lens. And then we will be getting some RTV or some black silicone or window sealant glue. Any of those three would work. Put it around the perimeter and press the lens on, and that should be ready to go for the headlight. Now I'm going to show you the process for the lower daytime running light, one of these, which is a lot simpler, although it was just as difficult to get the lens off. So what we're going to do is remove these 3 screws, and then we're going to be removing these 3 from the board and replacing it with the new board. Now these have their own drivers as well, which we disconnected already, and these drivers will not be used either, which sit right there. So take off the old board. Now this old one is bye-bye, and we got the new one. Before putting it on, let's clean off that surface with the wire going out the back. Make sure those wires behind it aren't pinched at all. They all should fit inside of that crevice. So get these new screws in. Little change of plans here for this one. Since we've got this sealing gasket for this thing, what we're going to do is send our wire through the hole of the original plug. And since that's sitting upright, we're going to end up not having as much of a risk of stuff running in there. So it's okay to leave it unsealed, however you run the risk of having moisture and or animals and insects running inside of it. And now we get to eliminate this as a whole and send this wire right on through this hole. It's gonna be a little tricky at first, but it will fit. And set this back in. It should fit a little bit better now since these wires are now going in that direction. And then we can put that LED driver on the back plate of this, sealing it up, but we won't be using that. So it's only for a cover. Alright, so that's how it should look. We can put the back driver on it. So we need that gasket, this thing. Put the gasket in there, put that driver on there. Screws back in, holding it down. And now this is ready to put the lens on, and we'll repeat the same process for the other one. So I'll catch back with you when I got them all together.
Alright, once you have your headlight lenses glued back onto your headlight assembly, you can start getting your wiring set up and together. I made it look a little as good as I could. What I did was each of these daylight running light setups has their own driver. So for the bottom daylight running lights, I put the driver zip tied to the top bracket and all the wiring zip tied to the existing harness. And then for the headlight, I have the driver attached right here. That's on both sides, and then the extra wiring I have zip tied underneath. So all that's left basically from each assembly is the plug wires and the ground wires. And then on the driver's side, I went ahead and hooked it all up. Since both of these drivers have their own grounds, I hooked them together to a body ground. I went underneath. You can see in there that yellow is an O-ring terminal attached to the body for both of these daylight running lights. And I have all the wirings zip tied up. since there's only one controller, you have to run one section of wiring over to the area of the controller. So I have both of these wires running along the ram bar on the front, behind it of course, with the wiring loom. So they're going to attach to this driver, and then this driver has the relay. And since we're over here, this is where the battery power is and the ground, so everything should hook up fine. And finally, the relay gets controlled by the wire that plugs into the headlight assembly on the back, which is this blue and brown wire. That's your power for the relay, and then the black wire is the ground, but you can use the ground anywhere. So the kit is supplied with these vampire clips. I don't like them, but it's probably the best idea to use these for the relay on this blue. So we're gonna just clip onto this blue to this red for the relay, and everything should work out. So I'm gonna finish this up and show you the final product. All right, so before I button this all up, I wanted to show you guys the electrical routing system because it gets a little weird and tricky. So I started on the passenger side, and I have all the wiring attached to the wiring looms running up. We have common grounds coming off of those, the drivers for the LEDs. So I have this connected to another driver that's connected to this headlight, and those grounds go together to the ground underneath on the body where that yellow O-ring connector is. And I have all these wires running along with this wiring loom zip tied together all the way to over here, where I did a similar setup on this headlight and this lower light. Those have the same common ground underneath right here, and then everything goes to the controller, which is right here. I have it zip tied to the frame. This has inline fuse powering the relay. So there's a solid state relay right after this driver between the power from the battery. And if you take this cover off right here, there's two tabs. There's a bunch of terminals. I use the terminal on the far right, or closest to the body right here. Take it off a little bit and slide in the power from this inline fuse, which I have located next to the fuse box, so if something happens you can replace it pretty easy. And then the ground for that I have routed. Took this off a little bit, put it underneath here and tighten it back down, so it has perfect power and ground. This right here is the solid state relay, and that powers straight to this driver, which has the 4 connections. You know, has these things. This is the only one I don't have plugged in, because once I get this bumper up, it'll reach. So they had a lot of various length wires. Some of these connectors I had to put extensions on that came with the kit, and some of them were way too long on their own, so I had to bundle them up, only because they had their factory connectors on them, and otherwise I would have cut and soldered them. But I wanted to retain the ability to take this stuff apart again, so it's all tucked away, hidden, but also serviceable, and makes it look good. So I tested it out already and it works, but I'm going to show you the final result once I get it all back together. So alright, so now when you hit the DRL lights on, your lights should turn on, and you can control these by your phone. And just take a look at that, it looks real nice. You can choose, you can make your own custom colors and everything, but thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned a lot on how to install this kit. And if you got any questions, leave comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.